Hello beer tubers and welcome to yet another Versus Beers. Me and Peter, the master of hoppets, battling two Irish style dry stouts. We're battling the iconic Guinness Draught against BrewDog Blackheart. So I've wanted to do this comparison ever since I saw this in the supermarket. Because I knew of this, but I didn't think it had distribution in Denmark, but it did. I don't know the age of the can because there's no packaged on date of the BrewDog beer, but the packaging date was the 30th of August for the Guinness. So reasonably fresh beers. And had an inkling wanting to drink more old school beer for a while, and I've been reviewing a lot of lagers and stuff, but where I really started my journey was with beers like this and English ales. So Guinness was one of the first stouts I maybe had besides, yeah, I think it was the first stout I had. Yeah, it must have been. And then my next stout was, I think, Samuel Smith's oatmeal stout and their imperial stout as well. And then I discovered then it was Beamish, I think. So Guinness is a beer that gets a bad rep in some circles, but to be honest, a pint of cold Guinness is really nice. It's so refreshing and drink. That's like how you make a refreshing stout. Like it's funny to hear people, beer geeks, they think it's too thin and watery and weak. And people who are not into beer think it's too strong. It's like weird. To me, it's a session beer. But for reference, I think we're going to start off with Guinness here. So immediately, I was thinking about doing this blind, but I ended up not going for a blind tasting just because I thought I'd probably be able to pinpoint it quite quickly, and kids in a rush, so we're just doing it full disclosure style. But initially, you can see massive differences. I'm not sure if you can see exactly on camera, but this is Guinness, this is BrewDog Jet Blackheart. And BrewDog's stout has a less tight head, and it's more roasty looking, like tan. It is also pretty much to a T the same color, but I think the BrewDog one has more like brown depth, if you can say it like that, whereas Guinness looks more or less just black. So one of the big things with Guinness is the roasted barley for the coloring. I think they also used flaked barley in Guinness. I'm actually not entirely sure now. I kind of want to see what they put in. So it says water, malted barley, roasted barley, hops, nitrogen yeast. So I'm guessing by saying barley, it could be flaked barley. I think I remember I heard somewhere that was part of Guinness. But enough talking too much about the colors. You can definitely see a clear difference. Let's start off with a sip of Guinness for the first time in a while. Smells like Guinness, smells toasty, smells like roasted malt. A sweet kind of almost oaty thing, which could be that flaked barley, but it smells good. Let's try it. Cheers. You can drink so much of this beer. This is exactly what I wanted right now. It's been the most hectic week with loads of brews and long brew days, experimenting with like adjunct grains and hazy IPAs and tapping beer, just getting everything ready before Christmas, the Christmas break. So it's been crazy. This is exactly what I want. It's Friday, and I want to chug this. I just want to chug it. I forgot to mention ABVs. 4.2% on Guinness, 4.1 on BrewDog Blackheart. So very toasty. It has an interesting flavor that reminds me of Danish vidøl, like almost like a sweet brown sugar note, just lightly. But it's toasty and charred and slightly burnt, but it's soft. So it's really balanced, the roastiness, so it's not bitter. So that's why it also has a mass appeal, because it's soft. The CO2 is not there because it's nitrogen. So instead you get this very soft, delicate, slick mouthfeel because of the nitrogen. And that's why a lot of people feel like Guinness is a flat beer. It's because the bubbles in nitrogen are so tiny, you can see it when it cascades when you pour it. Then it feels more soft on the tongue, whereas CO2 bubbles are bigger and more hissy and aggressive. So you get more of that lively feel on the palate. But yeah, toasty, bready nuances as well in there. A little bit of almost like a vanilla or a custard, like just lightly like a sweet creaminess, or maybe like a sweeter oatiness, or I guess flaked barley. but there's a light sweetness that leads your mind towards flavors like that. I think that's great. And I don't care if like craft people think like, what the hell? This is great. This is great beer. And it's big beer. But it's just nice. It's probably better if you have it on draft at the source, or well, not really at the source, but somewhere in Dublin, or just some good bars. I know there's actually people online who just review Guinness at different bars, which is crazy. But it's always better to get it really fresh on draft. But at home, I think this is a good solution. And I think they've done a few different silly kind of variations on this now as well. They've done like these thing like cans you buy, and then you put this thing on top, and then you could pour it like at the bar. But Guinness, I like it. So let's move on to BrewDog. So this one should have more flavor. BrewDog, you know, is everywhere now. They're a supermarket brand in Denmark. I haven't really followed BrewDog in a long time. I've drunk a lot of the beers because like they've just become one of those supermarket craft brands. They're just become the opposite thing of what they were trying to be. So they're just massive, you know. But I'm sure some of their beers are still good. So, and I've heard a lot of people say this is one of the best Guinness or BrewDog beers in recent times. So this would be fun to see. So, yeah, let's check out the aroma on this one. More roasted and more chocolatey. So they put a thing on the description of this that like it's taking like the dry stout to a new level and all this because they use darker crystal malts and chocolate malts. And you can smell that. There's almost something that reminds me a little bit of Young's Double Chocolate Stout without the chocolate flavoring. It has like just like that sweet chocolate malt aroma. It must be some kind of like carafa or something, like dehusked chocolate malt, because it smells like it's not super roasted. Interestingly enough, it smells more chocolatey than toasty roasty. Like Guinness smells toasty and roasted, almost slightly burnt bready. This is more just chocolate. There is maybe a slight hint of like toasty breadiness as well. Maybe not like burnt per se, because that one is almost more into a burnt thing, but yeah. And the caramel for sure. It has some like almost fudge to it. Toffee or something like that. But it smells fairly similar to a beer like Guinness, so a pretty good interpretation. Let's try it. Cheers. It's a different beer, for sure. And it tastes more craft a little bit, just because it has more flavor. But I think I'd argue that, no, you could also session a few of these, but I still think not as much as Guinness. They're actually very different beers. Guinness is much softer, both in the mouthfeel, but also on the palate, the flavors. It's more delicate, that roasty, toasty, kind of sweet, almost oaty, flake barley, vanilla-y thing. This is more chocolatey, caramel, toffee, more acidity to it as well. Like a higher acidity, like almost like a little bit burnt as well, this one. Because it didn't have like that, like this also has a little bit of a burnt nuance. But it has definitely more flavor, Blackheart. Yeah, I don't know if it's, yeah, there is a burnt kind of bitter aftertaste, bitter dark chocolate or something. And up front, it's just like chocolate malt, really. It also tastes a lot like eating, if you've ever tried eating chocolate malt. But it's definitely much more caramel forward and toffee forward. But the higher acidity gives you kind of slight, is it berry nuances or something? There's something, the acidity in here gives it some kind of like fruitiness. But I think the mouthfeel might be better than Guinness. Definitely. Definitely much more silky than Guinness. It's actually really good. I think it's more complex and not like just kick back, drink loads of pints. So you can think a little bit more about this one. But is, you know, it's maybe not as sessionable, but I was thinking I'd enjoy Guinness the most in BrewDog's like But that actually is a really nice interpretation of an Irish dry stout. I'd probably be able to drink like 3 cans of this, I'd imagine, or something before getting sick of it, or maybe even just 2. Whereas Guinness, that could be quite a lot. But wow, I actually prefer the BrewDog. I was when I drank that first sip of Guinness, I was sitting like, yeah, BrewDog's not gonna top that. That is just so refreshing. And then I cracked this, and it's like, well, maybe this is actually better. More toasty, more sharp roasted profile. Actually, the more I sip on it, I said initially there's not that much roasted, mostly chocolate, especially on the aroma. But the flavor, especially as it dies down, it has a higher bitterness, it has a higher roast profile. It seems more like a slightly more vibrant dry stout. Really good interpretations of the style, both, I guess. I mean, Guinness is the example most people know. It's as I said, it's a nice beer. I like a Guinness, but this has more stout characteristics. It's more roasty, and it's got the toffee and all that, which is nice. It doesn't per se have the same kind of vanilla-esque thing or something like that going on. Like the sweetness is more like caramel sweetness. A bit of coffee as well in this one. You don't really get that in Guinness. And it's funny, initially this seemed a whole lot more acidic, but your palate adjusts, so it's not like that fruity. I'm not picking up much of the fruitiness now. They could do so many fun things with this at BrewDog. They could do a vanilla version. They could do coffee version. They could do so much. I think even Guinness did a cold brew coffee version that was never released over here. But I think actually the winner is BrewDog Blackheart. They say like move on over and you don't have to go to Dublin to drink a great Irish. They do the BrewDog marketing, but it's actually a really good one. It's a good Irish. It's a bit more edgy and it's a bit more raw because of the bitterness and the roast, which I don't mind necessarily. But to be 100% exactly like Guinness, it should be pretty much just more of this in terms of flavor, just having everything more-ish. Where it's like Guinness, but it's also a bit its own thing because of the layers of caramel and chocolate. But if I have to mention like the best like draft stout type beer, it's actually not a stout, it's a porter, and it's from Anspech and Hopday, their London Black. That beer is one of the best nitro beers in Europe. And I wish we could get it in Denmark. When I had that in London for the first time, I was like, oh, wowzers, this is bonkers good. So who's the winner? I'm actually going to go with BrewDog. And I thought just when I had the first sip of Guinness, Guinness was going to be the winner because I just enjoy a glass of Guinness once in a while. And as I said, like these kind of beers, after like crazy days of working with like session beers, but with some good decent amounts of flavor, it's just nice. It's really refreshing. It's like no flaws. It's just well made, bigger brewed beer. I think Guinness get a lot of slack from some people, but I don't think Guinness by any means is a terrible beer. And I think it's a beer like if you've never had a Guinness, it's a freaking must. It's such an iconic beer. So I'm gonna score BrewDog Blackheart at 90, and a classic Guinness Draught from the can. Probably, like, I think I gave it an 88 when I reviewed it, which was a long time ago. I found out 5 years. Was that how it was? I gave it an 80. I think that's too low. I would probably give this like a 375 or something like that on Untapped Guinness, this can. And I'd give this a 4, which is really high. I didn't expect that for a BrewDog beer. But yeah, Guinness, maybe like an 88. It's 87. It's still a quite nice pint of Irish dry stout, even a can from the supermarket. Although it's of course always better on draft. You might be able to hear some kids in the back. It's bedtime, and the missus like, "Go review your beers. I'll handle the kids. I think she needs some help." So, with that said, let's cut this review very long. I talk too much in this one. So if you guys had a chance to try BrewDog's Blackheart or Guinness Draught Stout, let me know what you thought of them. Do you have a favorite of the two? As I said earlier, I think Anspech and Hopday, their London Black, which is a porter, might be my favorite dry stout. But I'd have to have that again. Again, it's a while. Was it last year, a year ago, something like that? I tried it where it's just like, wow, amazing. More than a year and a half. But if you guys had either of the two, let me know. And as always, remember to comment, subscribe, check out the Facebook fan page, and Twitter, and Instagram. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Ring the bell for future notifications about videos. And I'm going to say cheers in my favorite, the BrewDog one. And also, of course, ask you guys, what is your favorite of these two? And if you haven't tried to do this comparison, you should. Because they are both now, especially if you're Danish, they are in Danish supermarkets. I got these in Frutex. So try and do this. That's a fun little battle. Cheers. Thanks a ton for watching, and see you guys in another beer review.